Road tripping in a Tesla can be easier than road tripping in any other car, including gas cars, if done right. I've been on plenty of road trips in my Model 3, including a 4,000-mile road trip across the country in the middle of a winter storm. I wanted to share with you my top 10 road trip tips in a Tesla to make your road trip fast, fun, and easier than in any other car. In this top 10, I have 4 tips for getting the most out of your battery, 5 tips for general convenience, and then I have one very controversial tip at the end, so stay tuned for that. So let's get into it. Top 10, first 4 tips, battery efficiency. Number 1, take more stops, spending less time at each supercharger. So for example, rather than staying at a supercharger for 45 minutes to get to a certain destination next, you can stay at one charge for 15 minutes and the next one for 15 minutes and then get to your destination, therefore only spending 30 minutes in total charging rather than spending one stop staying there for 45 minutes. Teslas have what's known as a charging curve, meaning that the longer you spend charging and the more your battery gets towards full, the slower the charging rate actually gets. So you'll charge faster between 20%, 30%, and 40% compared to if you were filling up to 80, 90, or 100% battery. Therefore, you can save a lot of time if you don't wait for your car to get to 80, 90, and 100%, but rather getting at a lesser percentage, spending more time getting those faster charging rates, and then moving on to the next charger when you have enough to get there. And going off that last tip, tip number 2, arrive at the superchargers with low battery. This is also because of the charging curve with Teslas. So if you arrive at a charger with 20, 25%, you will still get those faster charging rates even as opposed to 40 or 50% battery. And furthermore, if you get there with a battery less than 10%, you could enjoy those faster charging rates for even longer. Obviously, you don't want to try to get there with 0% each time in case something happens, so leave a little bit of buffer, but not too much. On this note too, if you're taking a long road trip across the country or across states with multiple supercharging stops, once you have enough charge to get to the next supercharger, you should go to get the most out of your time. Tip number 3 has to do with the chargers themselves, and this is look for the 250 kilowatt hour chargers as opposed to the 150 kilowatt hour chargers or even chargers less than that. So version 3 and version 4 superchargers are 250 plus kilowatt hours, meaning that you'll get faster charging rates at those chargers. Tesla navigation is usually pretty good at navigating you automatically to the faster chargers, but sometimes you have to look on your own as well. Now, if you're going across the country, there may not be instances where you get to choose between a 250 and 150, so you have to stop at the 150. But if you're going through a big city with multiple chargers on your route, I highly recommend stopping at a 250 kilowatt hour charger because that will give you faster rates of charging. So the best way to get the fastest charging rates is to, as we previously mentioned, arrive at very low battery and find the fastest charger, which would be a 250 plus kilowatt hour charger. And lastly, for battery efficiency, tip number 4 is to navigate to the supercharger even if you know where you're going. This is because Teslas automatically preheat the battery if they know you're arriving to a supercharger. This allows your car to be ready and preheated enough so once you plug in, it'll get the maximal charge that it can. You don't want to arrive to a supercharger with a colder battery, especially in winter, because it'll have to decrease the charging rates in order to warm up the battery to get the charge. And I say winters, but even in warmer days too, batteries need to get very hot before they can be ready to fully charge and take the maximal charging rate. So even in days where it's 60, 70 degrees and sunny, you still would benefit from navigating to the supercharger to make sure your battery heat is at the optimal heat level to take in the full charging. All right, the next 5 tips talking about convenience. Number 5, use Autopilot, but not just why you think. Obviously, using Autopilot seems like a no-brainer. It's easier to drive across the country if you don't have to drive literally. But with Autopilot, they want you to tug the wheel every 10 or 15 seconds if you're not touching the wheel or not paying attention to the road. The Tesla uses the wheel and the camera, the in-cabin camera, to detect whether you're paying attention to the road or not. And if you're not paying too much attention, the car will ask you to give a tug to the wheel every 10 or 15 seconds. And this can be very annoying going on a cross-country road trip, having to nag the wheel every 10 seconds. But a lot of drivers don't know that if you keep your hand on the wheel with a slight pressure, the Tesla will sense that you are there, alert, and paying attention to the road, and it won't ask you to tug the wheel every 10 or 15 seconds, but rather every minute or two. Now with that being said, definitely pay attention to the road, but man, using Autopilot is a huge lifesaver on road trips. I can say personally that it's more fun on a road trip when you get to your destination after a few hours and you don't feel so tired from driving because you let Autopilot take the wheel for you. Tip number 6 to save time: when you're getting food on your road trip, order takeout ahead and then pick the food up and eat at the supercharger. If you have to stop to charge and then take an additional stop to eat, that just adds an extra stop to your trip, and if you're trying to save time, that's definitely not what you want. And even on the slower superchargers, the charging rate is still pretty fast and it doesn't give you a lot of time to go to a nice restaurant, sit down, order and eat. So your best bet is to order takeout ahead of time, to pick it up and eat at the supercharger. That way you're getting your eating and your charging both in the same stop. And pro tip, you're not just limited to what you can eat around the charger. It might take an extra few minutes to go out of your way to pick something up, but it's still saving a lot of time compared to parking and eating at a sit-down restaurant or eating in any restaurant. Tip number 7, if you're taking a long trip and need to stay overnight, find a hotel with a destination charger. A destination charger lets you charge overnight, and they're usually free at a lot of hotels. A destination charger is a slower charger, but if you're staying there overnight, you can wake up with a full battery, usually for free if you're a guest, and it takes one less supercharger trip to get to your destination. Now, destination chargers aren't too common during the time of this video, but you can find them pretty easily on the Tesla navigation system. If you go to the charging section and click the 1 volt instead of the 2 or 3 volts, the 1 volt shows the slower chargers, and a lot of times these will show the destination chargers in or around your area. And I always recommend too calling ahead to make sure the charger works, and sometimes if they get busy, you can definitely ask them to reserve a spot for you. But if you have a chance to arrive at a hotel with a low battery and wake up with a full charge for free, definitely take advantage. Tip number 8, on a lot of road trips, you definitely need to take time to get out of the car, use the bathroom, get some snacks, and get your legs loose. So I recommend using the superchargers as these general rest stops. It's not like the supercharger locations are in the middle of nowhere. They're often found nearby gas stations, restrooms, grocery stores, and restaurants. So instead of taking an additional stop to use the bathroom and get some snacks, if you go to a supercharger with resources around you for a bathroom, for some snacks, to get out and walk around, to go grocery shopping, you can definitely use that as a rest stop. And I say that because a lot of times, especially with the faster chargers too, by the time you go into a gas station, use the bathroom, get a snack and do whatever, it's usually time to go already. If you're getting enough battery to just make it to the next charger to optimize your road trip, you will not need to spend more than 15 or 20 minutes at most supercharger stops. Tip number 9, wrapping up the convenience section, is to camp at the superchargers. Now this might not be a comfortable option for a lot of people, but if you're feeling really adventurous and definitely want to save some money and some time, it's a great option to do that. You want to make sure the area is safe and has some lighting for sure, but you can definitely use camp mode next to a supercharger. And you don't have to worry about how much battery you'll use overnight, because if you need to, you can always top off at the supercharger and get right back on the road. Obviously, a hotel would be way more comfortable, but if you're trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible, this is probably your best option. And lastly, number 10, my favorite tip, very controversial: don't plan anything. When we took our 4,000-mile road trip, we had everything planned out. Almost every stop, every hotel we'd stay at, what we would look for, everything was planned. However, you might drive for X amount of miles and plan to stop at the supercharger, and the car might get more or less range than what you anticipated, and you might have to stop sooner, or you might be able to skip that supercharger, go to the next one, and then your plans for the rest of the road trip are all out the window. So I like to say don't plan anything, because the car does it for you. All you have to do is put in which city you're going to, and that is literally it. The car's navigation system will tell you which chargers you have to stop at, what battery you'll arrive with, and how long you'll have to be there for before leaving to your next charger or next destination. And with the car's navigation as well, if you miss a supercharger or stop at an extra one and don't follow the car's plan, it will adapt in real time in seconds. So you don't have to worry about if plans change based on the car's navigation plans. Like I said, for our road trip, we planned to stay at this hotel in this city on this night, but when we got there, we had plenty of energy and actually wanted to drive a little further to make the rest of our road trip easier. So our plans that we wrote were just pretty much out the window at that point, and we relied on Tesla's navigation system. So on that long road trip, on the way back from Chicago back to Las Vegas, we didn't plan a single thing. The car gave us all that charging information, and when it got nighttime and we needed to sleep or find somewhere to sleep, we always were able to find a hotel on the fly. And saying on the fly doesn't sound too reassuring, but there are a lot of hotels in the smallest cities, especially on these major interstates. So taking a road trip and finding a hotel that same day or the same night is not very hard to do at all. And in fact, I bet you'd be surprised at how many hotels in these smaller cities do have destination chargers. So although it may be controversial, I recommend to not plan anything except where you want to go and let the car take it from there. But if you have some things along your trip that you want to see or want to stop at, that's a different story. But at the end of the day, to take advantage of Tesla's top tier software, you can let the car plan the whole trip for you and you just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. If you guys found this video useful, please leave it a like, and if you want more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have any road trips coming up yourself or you're interested in getting a Tesla one day for a road trip, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.